Hi guys, welcome to the good old days, and I'm going to be reading from the book We Had Everything But Money. The first story is going to be Creative Mom Turned Drafty House into Cozy Home. In the deep depression days of the early 1930s, we lived in a drafty old tenant farmhouse. My mother worked hard to make it a home, and even at age 6, I knew that she was unusually creative. We had no running water, but thanks to Mother, we did have a sink. She punched a hole in the bottom of an old dishpan, attached a funnel underneath, and hooked that up to a rubber hose that ran through a hole cut in the floor. That's just one example of how Mother learned to make do. Here are a few more. In our front room, she covered the bare wooden walls with a combination of burlap feed sacks and 3 different patterns of wallpaper that a friend had given her. She worked the wallpaper scraps into an attractive design, affixing them with a flour and water paste. Mother even made a sofa for us. She cut some old bed springs in half with an axe, placed the springs on a wooden frame that she built herself. She made the seats in the back from a chintz fabric backed with flannel and stuffed the cushions with ungin cotton that she had picked with her own hands. The central room of our house was covered with wallboard, and Mother took care of that too. She went to the creek bank and brought some tubs and buckets of clay, which she spread over the walls. When the clay dried, it was a pale buff color, which was more attractive than the wallboard had been. That was by Johnny Gregory of Mathis, Texas. And here's the pictures of that. Okay, next story. Our clothing taught us about recycling. It may be surprising to youngsters, but the jeans we wore through the Depression were very much like the ones in style today, faded and wrinkled with repeated washings. I'll admit our jeans didn't fit like those of today, but we certainly got more for our money. We called jeans bibless overalls back in the 30s, though Levi Strauss sold them as waist overalls. I bought my jeans through the Sears Roebuck catalog, and there was nothing glamorous about them. They were actually men's pants, as no jeans were made specifically for women until about 1935. I wore them cinched in at the waist with a leather belt. High fashion didn't matter around the house or the farmyard. When I wanted to go to town, I had 2 dresses to choose from. One morning, I was putting one of them on when I found that a grasshopper gnawed a big hole in the front of it. I was reduced now to one good outfit, just like my husband, who had 1 pair of pants and 1 sweater, besides the jeans and shirt he wore every day. Our kids' clothes were strictly makeovers. Relatives gave us their used clothes. Though these articles were old, they were constructed of good material, and when made up, they really looked nice. I made pants for our son from a pair of his grandpa's corduroys, and I made his coat from an old coat of mine. Used coats normally looked just like new when they were turned inside out. We've never heard of recycling back in the 1930s, but we were practicing it. Everyone was making do. It wasn't so bad having to wear cheap clothes if all the neighbors wore the same kind. And that story was by Rose Van Schaak of Mesa, Arizona. We invented our own soap. There was no such thing as liquid soap in the 1930s, so we used salt sacks to invent our own. The sacks were 6 to 7 inches wide and 10 to 12 inches long, and we used them as dishcloths after carefully removing the pull thread to make liquid soap. We'd put a bar of crystal white soap in the sack and soak it in dishwater. In a few minutes, the soap was soft enough to make a lather inside the sack. Once the soap had softened, we'd open the top of the sack just enough and blow a little air inside. Then we'd close the sack and squeeze. The result was plenty of bubbles, much like the ones we get today by adding a little liquid soap to dishwater. The convenience of today's dishwashing liquid is nice, but it was lots more fun to make your own. Soap making is all but a lost art today, but during the 1930s, many farm families helped keep the expenses down by making homemade lye soap. Watch it, Mom! Clothing was mended, patched, and repatched to make it last as long as possible. A few mending jobs like this one on the right, just couldn't wait. This is the patch job. Her little wee one over her lap as she's stitching his pants up. And this is the woman that's making lye soap by boiling it and getting it hot. Okay guys, that's tonight's Good Old Days read. I appreciate you tuning in, and I'm sorry that I had to use my cell phone tonight, but you know, life comes first, and we got done planting a couple 8-foot fruit trees and spiking them. That's the word I couldn't think of last night. Spiking your fruit trees is nothing more than feeding them with nutrients that are time released. Alright guys, I hope you have a great night. Blessings.